Hello, folks. It's Chris Gordon with you for DJB Productions. Happy Halloween. We have a really great show. But I want to remind you first to hit the like button and hit that bell. Get your notifications for all things scary today on Bite Me. And today, two awesome guests. Lily Hernandez is with us. And we also have Stacy Rubel. Now, Lily and I, we've done some shows together. This is my first time meeting Stacy. It's a pleasure. And thank you so much for joining us because today we're talking about what's behind me.
Spooky forests.
Yes, we're talking about a very creepy forest. And we're going to get a lot of information on it. I like to call it the Sea of Trees. But Lily, your pronunciation is much better than mine.
It's the Okigahara.
Yes, and that is located on the northwestern flank of Mount Fuji, Japan. So let's talk about this very intriguing forest. Let's start with you, Stacy. What's the legend of the Sea of Trees?
All right. So the legend is that, and it's kind of strange because the whole thing kind of started with a volcanic eruption that kind of covered like this area and became very fertile, in the Sea of Trees. Has a very strong magnetic pull because of the alloys in there. But the most interesting of all is that the people in the area believe it's home to ghosts, spirits, yurei.
Okay.
So a lot of the times there's a lot of folklore and people discussing things, and it kind of like, kind of builds on itself, kind of like an urban legend, but also there's a lot of like truth to these things, similar to like, for example, it's obviously home to a lot of suicides. They actually send people out each year to take a peek to see, what they can find. And the terrain is very interesting. Like the whole forest has this like allure to it, whether it's beauty, science, or supernatural. It's a very cool phenomenon.
Yeah, but so
And
speaking
sad.
of the phenomenon, like when did the suicide start? I mean, let's see, how old is the forest? What was it? In terms, I mean, I think it sprang up from an eruption, right? I think it was 860, the year 864, right? So
Yeah.
we're talking, forest has been around a while.
Yeah. Been there for a
When
hot
was
minute.
the first recorded body found? Like what year did this start?
I think it started to really pop into pop culture. I can't remember when the first body was found, but I know it really started becoming prominent in the early 70s. They started talking about it. It started becoming more prominent for suicides. However, when they took a look back at it, they found that because of Japanese culture, there were, a lot of suicides. It's actually one of the highest countries in suicide rates, that it had probably predated, what we know about the forest. So, they believe it may have been home to like ritual suicides and things like that earlier on.
And I guess, and Lily, one of the things about this forest that I think makes it, I guess, may even really give into this folklore is how unbelievably quiet it is in that forest because of its density.
Yes, and that's mostly because, like you said before, it came about because of a volcanic eruption. If you know anything about biology, volcanoes produce very fertile soil because of the high nitrogen concentration. And so the trees did their thing, life does its thing. And so there are so many trees. It is so dense, and that's the reason why it's so quiet. Other weird things that happen in the forest, compasses sometimes act a little crazy, and it's because of the high iron content in the soil that causes compasses to act a little funny because it adjusts the magnetism that they would normally function in. So it's really interesting to think about from a scientific standpoint, all of these things that are super creepy. If you don't understand science, then yes, the folklore is definitely there, but the science is also there to back.
So what about the lack of wildlife in the forest? I mean, because with the trees, of course, the fertile ground. Is there a reason why wildlife doesn't or isn't A, maybe attracted to that area, or B, maybe just can't thrive in it? Does that have something to do with the content of the soil?
No, not necessarily. Animals are interesting because the way that they behave has a lot to do with their environment. And so if there are people, there are suicide patrols that come in regularly to double check and, canvass the area and make sure
Right.
that if there are bodies found that they are taken out. Animals may not necessarily want to hang out in those specific areas, but there are lots of places because the forest is so dense and it's so you can very easily get lost in it. There are lots of places that people haven't been yet. And so, we don't know what's going on in those areas. There may be lots of animals
Oh, well.
in those areas where there aren't as many people. There's a specific trail that you can follow. And then most people, it's really cool because sometimes people aren't sure whether or not they're going to go through with it. And so they tie tape around trees and
Yeah.
paths so that if they change their mind, they can follow the path back out.
I was watching a video on that today.
It is the crazy.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're not sure. And so if you go along those trails or along those paths where the tapes are, you may find things. But then there is, like I said, so much more that is yet to be discovered in that forest.
Well, that's crazy because to give scope on the density, it's 12 square miles, which doesn't sound like a lot, but then you have the density of that forest that you just said that a lot of hasn't been explored. And then there's caves. I haven't even talked about that.
Oh yeah.
Huge bat cave. And there's a frozen cave too, which is crazy if you think about it. That many different elements in one area. That's, like you said, 12 square miles. That's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
So were the caves, do you think the caves were there already, or were the caves formed by the eruption too?
That I'm not sure. I'd have to do some more.
Because that would be, that's crazy.
Yes.
I can't verify, but I was reading a little bit about it, and they do believe like a lot of the caves were formed from the eruption, not just from like, any sort of like ash fall or lava flow, but also just the disruption of the ground.
Yeah, I guess it
like
would be kind of like an
sinkholes and
earthquake,
stuff.
wouldn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, there's a volcano eruption. I'm sure the ground gets.
Yeah, so they think there's a lot of like a lot of unknown caves, a lot of sinkholes. The terrain is extremely uneven because of that whole thing. Yeah.
So I'm going to ask another science thing here. Do you think that, because as you said earlier, that Stacy, you were talking about earlier about how they could kind of record this going back to the 70s, these suicides. And so Lily, do you think, is it possible that ground composition, like we're talking about the high iron, right? That would be a high iron content. If it's enough to disrupt a compass, equilibrium, right? Whatever. Just throwing this out there as a stretch. Is it possible that could actually affect someone going into, because I know they have these signs up at the forest saying, don't do it. You know what I mean? They actually have basically like.
Of that they have those signs up saying things like, think about your family and think about your children.
Yeah.
I won't say that it's an impossibility because in science, we can never say that anything is absolute fact. It would be good for us to do some research on that and see. I'm so sorry. My husband is being very distracting right now. It would be really cool
It's all good.
to do some research on that and find out, because that's a valid point. My thinking is because the ground is so uneven, because the terrain is so unpredictable, who knows how many people just got lost and, weren't intending to kill themselves at all. That's also a possibility. But like I said, yeah, in science, I never say anything's impossible. Maybe improbable, but I never say it's impossible. We just found water moon, guys. So
yeah, I know. I just read about that. I was like, sweet.
Yes. So, that's beautiful things about science. We think we know, but we never really, really know.
Yeah, and this is kind of venturing into more, I guess, I mean, both science and supernatural. A lot of people who think they've been haunted, there's been documentations where there's honestly been, little explanation. But then there's certain cases where if people are exposed to a certain type of electromagnetic field for long periods of time, it literally makes you feel like you're being watched. It affects your mood. It can make the hair stand up on the back of your neck, feel like, it gives you all these sensations, and it affects you psychologically and physiologically.
Right.
So who's to say that there's not, a combination of alloy in there or some sort of electromagnetism, especially because of all the metal alloy in there from the eruption, that maybe it does affect people and they don't even know it.
Yep.
And they found out the cell phones a lot of the times won't work there for the same reason that the compasses won't. So.
Yeah, they actually have. We were talking about the signs we were talking about before, but they have. I think also like the taxis in the area and a lot of the locals have been. They're told, when you see people entering the forest, see how they're behaving. Keep us in the loop. Because I know it's a tourist attraction. I mean, just from a tourist standpoint, but
Yeah.
from what I've been reading,
Like to try to camp there, and they have suicide patrols. So when they see people that are going in, or they see people who are setting up tents, they always ask them if they're okay, and try and assess the area and assess the situation, because they don't know if this is just someone who's being touristy or if this is someone who went there for a reason. And so that's an important part. I think it's really cool that they have these patrols and they have all of people who are addressing this, because obviously if someone is entering the forest, the assumption is that they're going in there to end their life, and life is precious.
Mm-hmm.
We will miss you regardless of whether or not we know you. And so it's always a good idea to let people know that you care and that they're not alone.
It's absolutely.
I agree. And that's the reason they haven't even shut down the forest entirely, because they assume that people who, like she said, people who have tents or go in with supplies, they're assuming that either they're touristy or that they're at least, not sure about what they're going to be doing. They're at least going to have like a chance. They're not sure that they're going to end their lives because they're coming in with supplies and a tent and things like that. But yeah, it's very cool that they have those patrols up and people to watch people. And I like that they're not forcing it on people, but they do want to encourage people to seek help, which is always a good thing.
No, absolutely.
But also, it's not allowed to camp there. Just throwing in that side note.
Oh yeah, you have to get permission. I was thinking of what's his name? Aaron Paul. I can't remember. No, that's the guy from Breaking Bad. He's like a YouTuber, and he got permission to get there. Yeah. That he's annoying, but.
Well, they had So I think we were talking about this earlier. In 2003, there were 105 bodies found. In 2010, there was 247 attempts, but 54 succeeded out of that number. And I think a lot of that goes back to that there are these patrols there that are just reminding you, hey, it's okay. You have a family. There's people that love you, and it's a great thing that they're doing, because there are people who are going in who aren't sure. And, so just in that, what was that? Was a 7-year period. I mean, it seems that they really have, they've really kind of honed in on it, which is nice. I mean, I don't know what the current numbers are, if they're even there.
Well, they don't publish them anymore.
Yeah, they stopped publishing them and publicizing them so that in hopes to decrease the number. Yeah, I was reading about that.
That makes sense. That's probably not a bad thing. So there was a movie. Who saw it?
Oh, The Forest with the girl who plays Marjorie Tyrell from Game of Thrones. I can't remember her name. Natalie Dormer. That's her name. Natalie Dormer.
I did not see it, but I know of it. I'm judging by the laughter there that it was not very good.
It was. I mean, it wasn't terrible. I've seen a lot of horror movies, so I can definitely say I've seen worse. But it was just like mediocre. I'd give it like a 5.2. Like it was just-
5.2. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, like it wasn't terrible, but it wasn't great. Definitely was inaccurate.
Right. That's what I was led to believe, that the basis of it wasn't.
Yeah, I was totally off. Other than like people go to the forest to commit suicide, that was like the only like thing that was correct, and maybe the forest being haunted, because of the Ure. But that's yeah. Other than that, yeah, everything else was just completely kind of wacky.
But it's a 5.2.
Yeah,
It's
I'd
a
give it a
5.2.
5.2.
There's another part to the suicide forest that doesn't have to do with necessarily suicide, but there is also folklore of abandoning your elders or your family members who are sick, which interesting to think about because I'm a type 1 diabetic, so I would think that at some point my family would have to take me there because they can't care for, or what's the word?
That's got to be an awkward car ride.
I can't remember the word. It starts with a U.
Yeah, it's Yubasute.
Yes, Yubasute.
That's what it was. Yes.
Yes, that's leading your elders into the forest and leaving them there.
This is a thing.
That's part
Yeah. If they had too many mouths to feed, because it's traditional in Japanese culture to take care of your elders.
Yes.
But if you became, unable to take care of the elders, obviously you're thinking about the younger people first. So they would lead their elders out there to essentially starve and die. They would like lead them out there so they'd get lost and can't find themselves back. And yeah, it was crazy.
Oh.
If you were an elder, or if you were sick, if you were unwell.
Yeah.
So you think those numbers, like you think some of these numbers that I read off earlier, do you think some of that, like let's go back to 2003, do you think that was something that was going on?
Probably not. That was more like, I think it was recorded 19th century. Like
Oh.
it was like a while ago.
But who knows?
Yeah. Yeah, right.
Well, I'm just saying, they're finding tents out there, who knows? Maybe it's just like, hey, grandma. No, I swear, we're just going camping. We're just going camping. Trust me. Look, I'll be right back. I have to get water. And they don't come back. I know. I shouldn't. It's just, I never heard of that.
I know, it is crazy.
My wife's Asian. I've never heard of that. Now I'm scared.
It's crazy because in Japanese culture, especially now, and even in Chinese culture, a lot of Asian cultures in general, they take care of the elders. They like all live in the same household. So I was really shocked to find that out, because I was like, wow, because usually it's part of tradition to take care of your elders because you respect them.
Exactly.
And then, but if you couldn't take care of everybody, there was this thing that they did, centuries ago, where they would just leave people out. It was insane. And who knows, they could be doing it now, because
hey Chris, how you feeling? I feel fine. Trust me, I feel good. There's nothing wrong with me at all, even though, like, I have a headache. I'm not telling you.
Oh, right. I would not tell anybody.
I go to the woods.
Feeling anything. I'd be like, no.
It's like when we were teenagers. That's the only way we could drink is go out to the woods. When we were teenagers.
Oh yeah.
Now I'm like, can't believe I wasn't left. Just leaving. To get lost. But you're right. That's interesting, because that's the thing about this forest is that because you can't really, it's easy to get lost in it, even with the compass, even though with GPS, right? Because you're saying the cell phones aren't working in this forest. And then you're right. I think like that's getting back to that silence. That it's, because you remember, like, in the wintertime and like the snow is really coming down. It sounds different. You're almost suppressed by the silence.
Yes, it's deafening silence.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering
that, like, density and padding. That's what snow does. It just kind of pads everything.
It pads everything, right?
Yeah, so like a sound room.
I don't know. I mean, for me, I don't know how, because I have really bad tinnitus, but I mean, I don't know. I don't know how I would fare in that forest. I mean, I love
it depends on the person. I would love to visit that place just from a biological standpoint, because of my love for biology. I would love to visit that place just to be there in that environment, but also to respect and honor the lives that were lost.
Mhm.
Just because everything is connected. It's really interesting because we don't realize how very small, but also how very large we are, and how we are all connected. Everything that is an organic organism,
Mhm.
everything that's alive, everything that breathes, everything is connected. And
Yeah.
so any type of loss that we I lost my train of thought again. Any type of loss that we experience in the biosphere is affected. So everyone is important. That's something that I like to teach my students. Like, we're all connected. We care about the bees. We care about the trees. Like, we care about everything because we don't think about it that often. And maybe we need to, especially now.
Oh yeah, no doubt. So is Mount Fiji still active? Is that an active volcano, or is it not?
I mean, it hasn't been doing a whole lot recently, but I kind of consider all potential volcanoes an active volcano. Like, it'll rumble from time to time, like a lot of other volcanoes, but not do much.
Okay.
Like, I personally consider Mount St. Helens an active volcano because that thing could just pop at any time. Any of these things can, but technically, no, it's not really active.
That's interesting. I'm not. I want to. I definitely. Speaking of Sea of Trees, what year did Mount St. Helens erupt? I'm going down this rabbit hole for a
I
split
feel like
second.
that was the
It
70s.
it
I
was.
just give me. I'm gonna Google it. Give me a second.
Yeah. Let's Google that because I
I
think it
know.
was like late 70s or very early 80s. I'm going to say
Yeah.
81 for the win. But I could be wrong. And the reason I bring it up is because
Ooh, so close. 1980.
I
So close.
yeah. Well, let's just say 81. Make myself look good.
There you go.
No.
We'll round up.
Come on.
Put
Come
that
on.
curve on there.
It's my birthday. But that's interesting because we know how insane that explosion was. Well, I don't know about you guys. I was alive. I was around. Because I'm old.
I was, but I didn't know about it.
I mean, it was the ash. I think it would get all the way past the Mississippi
Oh
from
yeah.
Washington State. I mean, it covered a good part of the state. Now, what? We didn't get a sea of trees there. Maybe we did. We just don't know about it. But I mean, in other words, that explosion was so massive, and but I don't remember there being a lot of like magma or any kind of lava.
Yeah, it didn't have a lot of like the
It was more
alloys
just
in it,
yeah,
a
it
lot
just
of
kind of
stuff
just
in
blew
it.
the mountain
Yeah, it
apart.
was a lot of just really hot ash, and it just but it was so hot it just vaporized things like that.
Yeah.
It blew down all the trees, but if you go back, actually, if you look at it today, because of the ash, because ash still makes the soil somewhat fertile, like those trees have started to grow back up. Like,
Yeah.
it's same thing with forest fires. They are very tragic. They do a lot of damage, but also it kills a lot of the underbrush so that it makes the soil fertile and it makes things grow. So it's like,
Oh yeah.
well, things are very destructive. They're also very
Well, I lived in the Pine Barrens for years, and I remember that there would be signs up in the middle of the summer saying "fire danger very high today," and they had the fire towers that people they would be in, keeping an eye out because the fuel that would just be on the ground with the pines and everything like that.
Oh yeah, because they're all barren pines. A lot of those are dried up and dead. Those things would catch. It's like those accidents that would happen around Christmas when you have a live Christmas tree. You let those pines like dry up. That
Oh, I
stuff is
know.
like kindling, man.
Yeah.
It's up.
I grew up completely paranoid of that. It'd be like
my parents.
I was scared of the lights on the trees. I'm like, ooh, who thought of this? Putting lights on dry pines.
I mean, to be fair, it's a step up. They used to put candles on.
I know.
Yeah, that I always thought was crazy.
Me too. I was like,
hey, I have an idea. Yes, let's put fire near that tree. Trust me, it's festive.
It'll be great. It'll look great.
Okay, so help me again. I really need to get my enunciation of this down because I'm always embarrassed about not being able to enunciate things properly. So the Sea of Trees is pronounced again
Okigahara.
Okigahara. Close enough, right?
That's pretty close.
Yeah,
Okay, not too bad.
Okigahara.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah, oh, that's better.
Yeah, there you go.
All right, cool. Um,
Interesting
very.
to throw out there really quick while y'all were talking about Mount St. Helens and stuff. So the Okigahara is the second most popular suicide place. The most popular is the Golden Gate Bridge.
Yes.
Series? I mean, I knew it was popular just because I live in the US. I didn't know that was like
The
Yeah.
Golden Gate Bridge is
number
Golden Gate
one.
Bridge, number one.
I bet that's haunted as shit.
Yeah, I lived in San Francisco. Yeah.
Right? Oh my God.
Yeah.
San Francisco for my birthday, and I loved it there. San Francisco is a beautiful place, and the Golden Gate Bridge is incredible to behold. I just couldn't imagine throwing myself off of it. But
Right?
It's you know, I
Crazy.
can't imagine, any of that. But yeah, I lived in San Francisco. Well, I lived in Napa Valley, but I was working in San Francisco at the time, and yeah, I remember that bridge. And once you're on it, you're like,
it's amazing.
it's insane.
But I just wanted to bring that up because you guys were just talking about
Yeah.
Mount.
No, I actually didn't know that. I didn't know Golden Gate was like number one, like in the world.
Yes,
That's crazy.
crazy.
Yeah, and there was someone who actually survived it.
Really?
Yeah.
Yes, I know about that too. Yeah.
Yeah. I forget who it was, but they survived.
They pretty much broke every bone in their
Yeah.
body.
Oh,
Yeah.
yep.
It was like hitting
Well,
concrete.
That's
Yeah.
that's what they said.
Yeah.
That falling
Yep.
at height, hitting water, like hitting the concrete for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it basically liquefied his bones, or
Oh my god.
Yeah, I'm surprised you survived, but he did.
survived. Yeah.
It's sort of like those crazy people who can end up surviving Niagara Falls drops, but
Yep.
they do that on purpose, not for a suicide, but for fame.
That was I remember that.
To
was
me,
the
it's
thing.
still a suicide because I'm like,
Yeah.
nah.
It was the barrels. They'd get in the barrel. Yeah.
Everybody would get in the barrel. I'm like, why is it always a barrel?
You really want to do it? Do it in a raft. Come on.
Right? Do it like a man.
Coming over in a raft. Anyway, this was really fascinating. I learned a lot, and from my initial reading on the Sea of Trees, it definitely seemed to have more of a kind of a supernatural thing. But Lily, I think you're right. You're talking about the ground, the lava, the way it was, the trees grew and the density. I think that it was probably a lot of science to that, also to the people who went into that forest, to end things, perhaps, unfortunately. But maybe it was that silence that gave them a resolve, you know what I mean? I don't know.
Really quite beautiful when you think about it. I mean, as devastating as it is for any human life to end, you can think, like, I can think about it as taking some type of solace, going back into nature and having that silence, and meeting that type of end. I can understand why it happens.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you don't want to hurt loved ones with it.
Right.
Because as far as they know, because they don't find a lot of people in there too. I mean, there's places, like she said, they haven't even gone to yet. They haven't even seen. And some of these people, could just go missing or don't get found later. And nobody wants their family member to find them like that. And then on top of that, like she said, yes, it's devastating when a human life ends, but if somebody's going to do it, I mean, that quiet, the nature, everything else would be such a calming thing.
Yeah.
So
that begs the question then. I mean, obviously there were some that were clearly suicides, from some of the research I did. A lot of it was hangings, stuff like that.
Yeah, hangings and overdose, I think, were like the two most popular.
It begs the question, though, if some people just got lost, maybe they were just hanging out and they got lost.
I mean, it's entirely possible. Like, nobody wants to starve to death. What if they can't get out and they knew that they were like coming to like an end they didn't want? Who's to say that they're not going to end their lives in order to stop that suffering because they can't get out because they're lost?
You're lost. And even like, just that, again, I'm still wrapping my head around that 12 square miles. It's
Yeah.
that dense. It's that dense. And you can get that lost. I mean, the Pine Barrens are bigger than that. And, well, that's for another show. I got some scary stories about the Pine Barrens, trust me. But I think it's 12 square miles, and it's that dense where you can get, and right, it's probably disorienting because of the iron in the soil. I mean, that's crazy. But I appreciate both of you today, and thank you for educating me on this forest. It is definitely a spot I want to visit, for the beauty, and obviously.
Oh yeah, it looks gorgeous. Like and like she said, I would love to go there just for my fascination with biology. I would just love to see everything there. That would be just such a cool place to see.
Well, the video I saw, I watched a video of somebody who did a little bit of a walkthrough. And he was filming it, and he turned around it was snowing. I guess it was that time of year, a lot of snow. But it was him, and I believe it was his girlfriend. They really only got so far. They're like, yeah, we're gonna turn around.
Because I think it's like a mile and a half in, things start to get kind of crazy with, okay, which direction do we go? It's about a mile and a half in. Super dense, and it's very difficult to figure out where you came from, even where you just were.
Yeah, right. It's kind of like when you're in those dreams. Yeah, I don't know if you've ever had these dreams. We all have, but you're in this dream and you're going down like a hallway, and you know where you are in your dream, and then you turn around and everything is not the same. Like you can't find your way back.
Before,
yeah. Well, that there's something else that can lend disorientation. I don't know. It's crazy, but yeah, I definitely want to visit.
Scary, also, all by itself, regardless of where you are.
What was that?
Being disoriented. That's scary in itself, regardless of where you are. Like from a neurological standpoint.
Oh yeah,
that's a whole other show too.
We'll get to that. Anyone else have anything you want to add? Anything you want to add to this?
I have one last thing that I would, just because we're talking about the suicide forest, I think it's important to address mental health. So guys, if you're watching this and you have questions or you're having weird thoughts, please find me on Facebook. Send me a message. Talk to me. I'm here and I will listen and I care. You are not alone. Just making sure that people know that, because I think that that's very important.
Well, thank you for that. Thank you, Lily. That's awesome.
Yes.
And without a doubt, yes, always reach out. Make sure you know what? Because it's true. We give a shit, and that's great.
I give so many fucks.
There are so many fucks to give.
There are so many fucks to give. I'll never run out of fucks. Because I've got them. I've got a ton of them. No, but that's very.
No, but
very
seriously,
well said. Yes, thank you. Thank you for that. And thanks everyone for listening, and tune in. We have more episodes of Bite Me. Have a great day, everyone. And Lily, Stacy, thank you so much. I had such a blast with you two. It's crazy.
Yes, thank you.
And I'm going to go back into the forest. Talk to everyone soon. Peace. Happy Halloween.
Yes, happy